had the most charming letter back from the chairman of the CCRC, Helen Picture. I wrote to her when Andrew Malkinson complained after the CCRC apologised to him that it wasn't done fast enough. And I thought, this is really very unfair. I've got a lot of complaints about the CCRC and the judicial system in general. But the fact that the chairman waited until the situation had been properly investigated before apologising to him made absolute sense to me. You don't really expect someone to sit there and apologise the moment the media say they should or the victim says they should before the situation's been properly examined. Anyway, she wrote to me and thanked me profusely for making the positive comments I'd made and agreed with me with my complaint about the CCRC, which is quite simply they're not properly funded enough, nowhere near properly funded enough, and they're also not therefore trained properly because they are not actually competent or able to examine things as closely as perhaps they should. They need far better training, but also far better funding, so there are many, many more investigators looking into the complaints about miscarriages of justice, such as my own. What dawns on me is something that Michael Norton said to me a few months ago. Michael Norton is a very eminent expert in this area. He runs the Innocent Project out in Bristol, out of Bristol University. I've got to know him over the years, and last time we met he said something to me quite interesting, which gave me grounds to think for a while. And the thought process was as follows. He thinks it's not just the CCRC or the system in general or the judges or whatever. It's very often the lawyers. And basically, most lawyers are not up to the standard they should be. They're not that involved. They take on too many cases. They don't know what they should be doing. And this applies to both Malkinson and the post office scandal, if you think about it. Lawyers representing the victims of all those miscarriages of justice should have stopped these prosecutions in their tracks. The moment they started, they should have looked at each of their client's individual circumstances and the case involved and said, look, this cannot proceed for the following reasons. And had they been any good, they never would have proceeded. That would have been the end of it. The fact that it went through led in many cases to convictions, sometimes to prison or even suicide and death. All the rest of it that's happened since, and the CCRC not being rapid enough to correct it and all the rest, all boils down to lawyers generally being completely useless, sometimes even corrupt and bad, but nearly always useless. Because if lawyers were any good, they'd have stopped these miscarriages of justice long before they happened, long before they even led to prosecutions, let alone convictions. This has not really been noticed because people are far too ready to take the easy option. Yes, the CCRC chairman should have apologised to Andrew Malkinson the moment his conviction was overturned. No, that's stupid, simplistic thinking. She quite rightly waited until it had been properly investigated and then apologised in full. Anyway, there you go. That's my thought.
Hey, I live in an apartment on the 99th floor of my block, and I sit at home looking out the window imagining the world has stopped. Then in walks this guy that's all dressed up just like a Union Jack. He tells me I've won 5 pounds if I have his kind of detergent pack. I said, hey, you, get off my cloud. Hey, you, too much noise. Don't you guys ever want to go to bed? Just 'cause you feel so good, do you have to drive me out of my head? I say, hey, you, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Don't hang around, don't hang around, get off my cloud. I'm sick and tired, fed up with this, decide to take a drive downtown. Well, it was so very quiet and peaceful, there was no one, not a single soul around. So I laid myself out, I was so tired, I started to dream. Well, in the morning, the parking tickets were just like flagged on my windscreen. I said, hey, you, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Don't hang around, don't hang around, get off my cloud. You, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Don't hang around, don't hang around, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Don't hang around, don't hang around, get off my cloud. You, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud. Hey, you, get off my cloud.
My comments on the transgender situation have received no kind of reaction whatsoever, as opposed to poor J.K. Rowling, whose very sensible and I think accurate thoughts were reflected in that report, the Casey report that just came out, or Cass report was it, that just came out. But I see that again, Daniel Radcliffe, who I think actually is a very good young actor, has come out again and said, oh, it's sad she hasn't shown empathy for the victims of all these things. And I go, oh God, it's such simplistic thinking. She has, but anyway, it's not necessary. That's not what she's talking about. What she's talking about is a much more varied and complex issue, that basically just because somebody says they're a man, said they're a woman when they're a man, or indeed says they're a man when they're a woman, should not be enough to enable them to behave in a way that, were they the actual gender they started with and probably still are, would have been either criminal or immoral behaviour. That's her point, and I think she's dead right on it. Interesting that none of you, my viewers and listeners and readers in King of Hits and everywhere else, seem to consider it really worth commenting on. I do understand it. There's very few people affected by this, and it really isn't a topic of massive interest, except, of course, to the media, which inflates minor topics into major, huge, all-important topics in order to get ratings or circulation figures or whatever. And we, the public, most of us are stupid, just simply lap it up. We haven't got the time or the inclination to think deeply about anything that isn't of any real interest to us. So we just lap it up, do what the media tells us to do, react as the media tells us to react, behave as the media tells us to behave, and that's what happens.
Well, now it's Judy's turn to cry, Judy's turn to cry, Judy's turn to cry. But Johnny's come back to me.
I'll bring back a few memories. Leslie Gore was 16 years old when record producer Quincy Jones heard one of her demo records, and a few months later she had her first #1 single, It's My Party, and Leslie was on her way. She followed that success, of course, with Judy's Turn to Cry, Maybe I Know, and then 2 years later, across the Atlantic, a young Cambridge University student was writing a second song for the B-side of a record that he was recording. Here's the B-side of the record. Listen.
streets full of people.
Everyone's Gone to the Moon sold 5 million copies worldwide. It was Jonathan King's best-known song in this country, although he had many more big hits in England. And all this week we've been looking back at the music of the 50s and 60s. And this morning we're happy to have Leslie Gore and Jonathan King with us, who are over here. Oh, God, I've got to look at that.
We're both even prettier now than we were.
I think Jonathan's really gotten beautiful, frankly.
You know, you were both so young. You were what? You were 16?
Yes.
You were 17, I think.
I still am, Joan.
You still are. How did your classmates react to you when all of a sudden you were this big celebrity?
Well, I was nauseating to start with, so I got no worse, actually. I was pretty horrid, wasn't I, Leslie? She was cute. She was really nice to me. I came over here on this huge television show. Thought, what am I going to do? So Leslie sort of mothered me and looked me through the whole thing.
Had a good time, yes.
Yeah?
We had a nice time doing those shows.
You were going to Sarah Lawrence College, I believe.
That's
and
right.
how was that for you? How was that difficult?
That was hard because I started when I was in high school, and
Right.
the class that I was in then, they were very much a part of the experience, and so that was easier. When I got to college, I already had some celebrity, and going to Sarah Lawrence as a rock and roller as opposed to a guitar-playing folk singer was not a good idea. So it was hard to kind of just acclimate myself to being there. It took about
And
a year or
just
so.
be a regular student and on campus. With all that success happening, and I would assume just so many opportunities coming your way, were you ever tempted to quit college and just pursue your music career?
Me personally, no, Joan, because I realised I had a lousy voice and no talent whatsoever. So I sort of used Everyone's Gone to the Moon as a launch pad and got in behind the scenes a lot, started my own record company, discovered a few bands like Genesis and the Bay City Rollers and 10TC. And
Just a few little bands.
Just a few little things, and went on to other such things, which I'm hopefully still doing. I've written my first novel, which is just published in Britain, called Bible 2, which is, gentle viewer, probably the greatest novel ever written this century.
If you don't think so, just ask Jonathan.
That's right.
But so it was really good that you've continued your college education and were able to continue your careers. You had such a string of hits. We want to listen to one more, okay? This is one, it was from 1965. You were on the show Shindig.
Lollipops and rainbows, everything that's wonderful is what I feel when we're together. Brighter than a lucky penny when you're near. The rain just disappears here, and I feel so fine just to know that you are mine. For my life is sunshine, lollipops and rainbows. That's how this street ring goes. So come on, join in. Everybody's sunshine, lollipops and rainbows. Everything that's wonderful is sure to come your way when you're in love to stay.
Boy, that can really take you back in
I
time.
hope you
What
have
do you
another
think?
embarrassing clip of him, too.
Well, as a matter of fact, we have one more clip.
Oh no, you're not
But
going to show that
it's-
one, please.
It's not just of Jonathan. We happen to find a clip of the two of you together on
My
television.
God.
Okay? Let's
Unexpurgated
look at that
version.
one. This is Jonathan and Leslie together.
Oh my goodness.
That
what are
was
they
when
doing?
you stepped on my foot. That was it.
Did he
Gentle viewer,
really?
This is known as Sadism America
Oh,
Incorporated.
It really is beneath the belt to show these things. I pulled in here
Oh,
and
is
one
it
of the
fun,
one
though?
of the crew said, "You haven't changed a bit."
Well, that's great.
I don't
Actually, it
know.
was great fun to do. It really was. It was
It looked
an
like
amazing experience. We had Ramsey Lewis trio on
That's
that
right,
show
he
as
was on
well,
that
and it
show.
was all a great giggle. But the great thing is, it was a marvellous time, the middle 60s, to begin your career. And especially, I was coming from England, and there were the Beatles and the Stones, and all these people were friends, and we were emerging together. And really, our generation then took over the world. We really dominated. We grew our hair long, which
It was
was
a
unheard of.
wonderful
in those
time.
days. Splendid time, and also a marvellous time to start and to build. And I've been watching the whole of this series, which has been utterly brilliant. Congratulations. And the one thing that I've noticed is it's great how you can start off having hit records or whatever, but then you can develop into other things. And I think it's what we've all done, and we've all had a great time doing. And this is really only the beginning, isn't it, Leslie? From now on, we're going on to bigger and better things. Let's go and sing Stop in the name of love.
Well, Leslie, you've been writing songs with your brother, right, Michael?
I have, yes. I continued on in college because I felt that the industry was somewhat transient, and one has hits only really for a certain amount of time. And then when I finished college, I began writing music because I really wanted to be a musician and not have to depend on working in Cincinnati one week or Dayton the next. And that's been very, very nice for me. And I, of course, wrote with my brother Michael.
You've had some success, I would say, with that, yes,
right,
Fame.
which Michael did all the music for.
Yeah.
And now I'm continuing with writing. As a matter of fact, I got a call just last week from a wonderful man by the name of Sid Raymond, who does the music for All My Children, a big ABC show. As a matter of fact, the biggest daytime show on all networks. And they asked me to write a song for Gladys Knight, who was to be appearing on the show, and that was a tremendous thrill. And now, apparently, we recorded it yesterday. It's all done and ready to go. And they've asked me to be on the show.
I was going to say that Leslie will be making an appearance on All My Children, and that's going to be next month, right?
I think so. There'll be one sometime in December, and then a couple more in January.
Gladys Knight, my favourite ever singer, apart from Leslie, of course. And I've got a record in the charts. Well, I haven't really got a record in the charts. There's a record high in the American charts at the moment called Gloria by Laura Branigan. But I had the original British hit with 3 years ago, so, you know, things keep going. We keep churning them out.
Do you like the music today? I mean punk rock.
Personally, yes, I love it. I think the new music, I would love to see the younger kids, because we were teenagers. And
I was waffling on even then, 40 years ago. I mentioned in the last episode Baby Reindeer on Netflix and why it's such a great series. I just wanted to point out that one of the reasons is because nobody is a villain. The fat girl who plays the stalker, and is, by the way, a terrific actress, she deserves to win an award for that, is also sympathetic. The horrible man who rapes him, it's not entirely the horrible man's fault. Part of it is due to Baby Reindeer himself, who takes every known drug and blames himself to a degree, and quite rightly, but not totally. It really is a very subtle, complex show, well worth watching because it's also thoroughly entertaining. Baby Reindeer on Netflix. Eurovision, it's that time of year. Those of you who don't know, and indeed recently on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or one of those silly sites, somebody said, despite not wanting to irritate Jonathan King, who started Eurovision. No. I'm sorry, I'm not that old. Eurovision started way back in the 50s, I think. But I did take it over and ran it for the BBC as executive producer. In the middle 90s, I tried to do two things. One, I wanted to take over Top of the Pops, because I felt that was losing its way, and I knew exactly why. It was because the major record companies were using it as a boost for their priorities instead of, as I used to use it, as a boost for records that had real commercial mass appeal potential. And as a result, the charts were full of non-popular records that all of which meant viewers just disappeared. And the second thing I suggested to David Lindemann, who was in charge of BBC Light Entertainment at the time, is that I should take over the Eurovision Song Contest for the United Kingdom or the BBC. Well, I couldn't do Top of the Pops because he'd promised that to someone else. And sadly, as a result, Top of the Pops died. And it was one of the great British institutions, and should still be to this day, and would be had I taken it over. But he let me take on Eurovision, and what I did was I started Eurovision off by finding a track called Love City Groove by Love City Groove. The great thing about that was it combined all sorts of different skin colours, genders, attitudes, and although we only came 10th, I think, in Eurovision that year, it gave me great joy because it did end up as a top 10 hit record anyway. And it was actually, during the week of Eurovision, the most requested #1 track on Kiss FM, which at the time, I think it was either still a pirate or it had only just become legitimate. This was in 1995, was a really popular radio station for young people. So I managed to get young people plus all races and everybody re-interested in Eurovision. The second year, which was 1996, I concocted, with the aid of various musical people, the record I thought was the perfect Eurovision entry, and it was a song called Ooh Ah Just a Little Bit, and to my disastrous, distraught agony, we only came 8th, and it was in Oslo, and I actually resigned. I said, if I can't win with that, which to me is the perfect Eurovision entry, I can't win with anything. And the guy who was then running things at the BBC, Mike Lego, who was an old friend of mine, begged me to stay on. He said, Jonathan, you're the first person we've had who's got one foot in the camp of music and one foot in the camp of television, and therefore you brought everyone together and you've turned it all into a great success. Please stay on, at least give us one more year. And I watched what we did. The performance was by a girl called Gina G. And I realised that Gina G, who had been behind the counter in Woolworths in Hampstead and a girlfriend of one of the creators of the song, had really not got great performance ability. She wasn't bad, but she didn't look great. She wore an awful dress made out of gold coins, which didn't work at all, I'm afraid. I know nothing about fashions, I know, as you can tell. So as a result, I had nothing to do with the costume. But she also couldn't really sell a song. So I thought, well, you know what? We need to really find someone who could sell a song. And a track I'd been championing years before, called Walking on Sunshine, was by a band called Katrina and the Waves. And I contacted them, and indeed Katrina, who was, and I think remains, an absolutely brilliant performer and seller of a song, sold that year's entry, Love Shine a Light, and we won. And that's the last time the United Kingdom won Eurovision, in 1997. So I've been quite interested in Eurovision since those days. I was never a big fan. It's not my kind of thing, really, because it's as visual as it is musical, and I'm really only interested in the musical side of things, in the musical side of music. It's no longer a song contest, and actually songs are what I really care about. That's why I was so disappointed when Ooh Ah Just a Little Bit didn't walk it by a million miles. But as a result, I've kept in touch. I made a lot of friends. It's the most wonderful event. It's such fun to be there. Everybody loves it. All the news crews go there, and they're so delighted not to be covering an earthquake or a tragedy or a war or something, but to be covering something for television that is completely pointless and ridiculous and fun and camp and amusing. And they all have let their hair down, and everybody has a great time. So I've got a big soft spot for Eurovision, taking place all this week. My favourite of the ones I've heard was by Croatia, which is another sort of silly lyric one, but sounds fun and is amusing and is catchy. And right from the first moment I heard it, I thought that could do well. I'm not 100% convinced. I don't think it's a great song. The last great song was Euphoria by Loreen, which was before she won last year, which I didn't like at all. And on Euphoria, somebody played it to me when it was just a demo going up for possibly representing Sweden, and I thought that's a smash. And at the time it was 7-1 on the Swedish entry, whatever that was going to be, and I stuck 100 quid on it and won 700 quid, and actually bumped into Loreen in Morocco on holiday. She originally was a Berber, an Arab from Morocco, and her parents emigrated to Sweden, and that's where she was born and brought up. And I bumped into her at the big, enormous Mawazin music festival, which is is sort of like Glastonbury to a degree, when she was staying in the same hotel as me, and I thanked her profusely for paying for my holiday. Anyway, watch Eurovision, have fun, enjoy Eurovision afterwards. Hopefully it's been a good time. I hate all this political link. I disapprove of linking music or sport or anything else with politics. For God's sakes, music is music, and I actually wish it was back to being a song contest. As for the UK entry, I really like Ollie Alexander. He seems like a really decent kid and a nice character, but the record means nothing. And anyway, anything called Dizzy is for me Tommy Rowe in the 60s, one of the great records of all time. And this one is really sort of ordinary, sort of Swedish, sort of disco, hip-hop, pop kind of rubbish to me. But who can tell? Let's see who wins. I shall hopefully be putting this up before the Eurovision final, and let's see if I'm right, if Croatia do rather well. I've always found the writings of Salman Rushdie unreadable, rather like Will Self, but I thought I'd try The Knife.
Not for me.
As it happens, I thought it was fantastic. Not being a Salman Rushdie fan, I've now become a huge fan of The Knife. It is brilliant. It's a love story, but it's also technically fascinating. Sorry for rambling on a bit in this episode. A Victim Bites Back 80, and for showing you rather boring, lengthy clips of me in the 80s, even including me in the 60s, and you must be looking at me now thinking, he's gone right off. But if you're still with me, and you're still enjoying it, I'll see you for A Victim Bites Back, episode 81.